Now, in the next 9 minutes, I'll share with you 2 key takeaways on how to master great people decisions. Now, I can't make you masters of the universe in 10 minutes. Jack Welch once said to me that when he first became a junior manager at GE, he would screw up half of his appointments. 30 years after that, of which the last 20 were at the helm of GE, leading what was the largest creation of value in the world's corporate history, he would claim, with his modesty, that he would still get it wrong 20% of the time. So if that happens to the manager of the century, you can imagine how hard it is for us. But the good news is that there is a proven process that would drastically enhance your chances of making greater people decisions. So I'll focus on 2 questions. First, what to look for in a candidate. How many of you are familiar with the concept of emotional intelligence? Great. How many of you have heard of the Marshmallow test? Very few of you. Okay, so I'll tell you. The Marshmallow test is a popular name of a fabulous experiment that was done at Stanford University 40 years ago. They got a large number of 4-year-old kids. They sat them in front of a table, and the experimenter would put a marshmallow in front of them and say, "Don't touch it yet." And the kid would start salivating like Pavlov's dogs in front of the marshmallow. Now, the experimenter would say, "I need to go out." It was 20 minutes. And here's the deal. The minute I go out, if you want, you can eat the marshmallow. However, if you can wait until I come back and I see the marshmallow on the table, I'll give you a second marshmallow, and you'll be able to eat 2 marshmallows rather than 1. It's fabulous. There's many modern replicas of this experiment that you can watch on YouTube. So what happened was, the minute the experimenter went out, half of the kids immediately ate the marshmallow and said, "I'm already 4 years old. I may be dead by the time he comes back." Discounted the future. Now, the other half of the kids, somehow at age 4, were able to calculate a 100% rate of return in a marshmallow in 20 minutes. That's higher than inflation in Argentina these days. Now, can you imagine the temptation? It's a test of sanctity. A naked marshmallow in front of you, nobody's watching, you're all alone. So what's the best way to fight temptation? Get distracted. So one kid goes to the corner, another one starts banging his leg, one falls asleep because of the anxiety. The one I like best is this little kid who, in these modern replicas, you watch the video, picks up the marshmallow, puts it down. Picks it up, puts it down. Picks it up, eats a tiny bit from the bottom and puts it back on his stomach. I would use this as an assessment center for Secretary of Finance in many countries around the world. Now, experimenter comes back to all the kids who didn't eat the marshmallow, gives a second marshmallow. They all eat the marshmallow, all normal kids, and they do 2 things. Immediately, they look for any differences in socioeconomic background and IQ, no difference. And then they followed those kids for the following 40 years of their lives. One of the marshmallow kids is a good friend. I spoke with her a while ago, and she was telling me, "Claudio, they are still calling me." And what they found was that the marshmallow grabbers, as they grew up, started having more behavioral problems, on average, than the other group, at home and at school. Started having much lower grades. Started having a much higher dropout rate from school. Started having more serious problems with drugs, initially tobacco and alcohol, and then harder drugs. A much lower percentage of the marshmallow grabbers made it all the way to the university, and of those who made it, the difference in the SAT was of 200 points, which is an ocean of difference. All of that because they ate 1 marshmallow when they were 4 years old. It's life unfair. So this experiment and several others is brilliantly described in a wonderful book, Emotional Intelligence, by Daniel Goleman, a frequent speaker with HSN. When I saw this book that was in the cover of Time magazine as the book that redefined what it means to be smart, I contacted Dan, and for the following 7 years, we did lots of research together at his Consortium for Research on Emotional Intelligence. He became curious about whether this would apply to different cultures, and I became curious about whether this would apply for executive search. And so I did the following. I classified the people I had hired into successes and failures. I looked at 3 broad characteristics and tried to see whether there was any difference in the profiles. Those were people we have hired with a very relevant previous experience, people who had very strong emotional intelligence, masters at managing themselves and their relation with others. And finally, highly clever people in the traditional sense of IQ, verbal, analytical, mathematical type of intelligence. I did the analysis at that point in time for Latin America, which is a place where, as I like to put it, Latin America is a place where even the past is unpredictable. I shared this with Dan and I said, well, let's look for a place where even the future is predictable. We went to Germany. And then I said, let's go to some place which is completely different from anything else. We went to Japan. Look at the profiles. For the three so different cultures, if you look at the first set of bars, exactly 70% of the successful people we've hired had a very previous relevant experience. So experience counts for a senior leadership position. But even more important than experience was emotional intelligence. 80% of the most successful people were masters at managing themselves and their relation. And the least important factor, relatively speaking, was IQ. Which doesn't mean that these people were stupid. I mean, they would not go like this when eating an ice cream, no? They were finalist candidates presented by the finest executive search firm in the world, Egon International. They were clever people with a wonderful experience who were masters at managing themselves and their relations. But look at the failures. If you look at the difference between the two groups, by far, if you have to choose one aspect to look at, that would be the best predictor of success or failures, that's obviously emotional intelligence. 80% of the successes had high emotional intelligence, and only 25% of the failures. And the failures, despite having more experience on average, and despite being more clever, fail because of their emotional stupidity. So, first question on how to master great people decisions. What to look for in the candidate? Remember to check for the soft. Because you hire people on experience and academic background, and you hire them because of the way in which they manage themselves and their relations.